SDGs Conference 2025. Welcome to Panel 2, Women and Youth as Leaders for Civic Engagement and Social Change. On September 24th, 2025, as the world leaders gather in New York during the UN General Assembly, the Journalists and Writers Foundation and its global partners will highlight the vital roles women and young people play in decision-making and participatory governance amid global crisis. Today, we stand at a crossroads, an opportunity to shape a more inclusive, equitable future for all. The selection of the next UN Secretary General in 2026 puts the spotlights on elevating women's leadership in global governance. Despite progress, women remain underrepresented at the highest levels of decision-making. Promoting diverse and inclusive leadership isn't just a matter of fairness. It's essential for innovative solutions and effective global action. When women's voices are heard, policies become more comprehensive, and the legitimacy of leadership is strengthened. Young people are not just the leaders of tomorrow, they are the leaders of today. Their creativity, energy, and fresh perspectives are critical in tackling complex global challenges. Despite progress, many women and young people face barriers, limited access to quality education, economic opportunities, and mental health support, especially in conflict-affected regions. This panel will focus on how inclusive governance, meaningful youth participation, and multilateral cooperation can foster trust, resilience, and social cohesion. We'll discuss innovative ways to empower young leaders, address intergenerational trauma, and ensure that youth voices are at the forefront of decision-making processes, especially in times of crisis. Join us as we champion a future where women and youth are not only heard, but are driving the change we need. Together, we can build a more equitable, resilient, and vibrant global community where every voice counts and every young person has the opportunity to lead.
Good afternoon, distinguished colleagues and friends. My name is Halime Benzer, and I serve as the Executive Director at the Atlantic Institute. We are a civil society educational institution based in the Southeast United States, and we're rooted in building bridges through dialogue and community engagement. The Atlantic Institute serves in 12 chapters throughout the Southeast United States, and we have over 200 partners that we team up with for programs all throughout the states that initiate this dialogue atmosphere. We work on growing the efforts of the UN SDGs in a way that emphasizes and works toward world peace and building understanding in our communities. And the Atlantic Institute is also very honored to be a global partner of the Journalists and Writers Foundation. So a special thank you to the JWF for organizing such an important event at the crossroads of the UNJ 80, celebrating the 80th anniversary and the 10th SDGs conference that the JWF has organized. We're very honored. So today's second panel theme on women and youth as leaders for civic engagement and social change resonates very deeply with me. We're empowering women and youth, but it's not only just to prepare them for leadership tomorrow and for the issues that are coming this way, but we're also recognizing their active role in shaping much more inclusive, just, and compassionate groups and societies in the spaces that we live in. Women and youth are not only participants, but also essential architects of peaceful and effective civic engagement and social change. So their leadership strengthens this inclusive dialogue that we all strive for, right? And ensures that global decision-making reflects diverse voices and perspectives. Global dialogue platforms like these, like the institutions that our panelists here today are a part of, remind us and bring action to the energy of youth and of women leaders together to form a powerful, active, dynamic space for shaping societies rooted in empathy and democratic values. So this specific theme is very, very dear and near to my heart, and I see a lot of youth representatives here tonight, this afternoon, and since the past 2 days, both in the evening of the reception and also in the roundtable discussions yesterday. So it is now my honor to introduce this panel's moderator, Mr. Ernest Alesin, Vice Chairman for International Affairs at the Lithuanian Union of Journalists and a global partner of the Journalists and Writers Foundation. So with over 30 years of experience across television, film, and print, Mr. Alesin has been a strong advocate for media ethics, freedom and expression, and of international cooperation. He has represented Lithuania in high-level forums, including in Washington, D.C., alongside the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania, and serves as the head of the Association of Minority Media. He amplifies diverse voices in national and international platforms, and in addition to all of this beautiful background, he contributes to media policy discussions as a member of the Media Council under the Ministry of Culture of Lithuania. So please, very warmly, please join me in warmly welcoming him to this session.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, welcome to, it's an honor to welcome you to panel 2, and small short introduction at the beginning. I have spent more than 30 years in media sector, and I have seen firsthand how societies, institutions, and narratives change in the last years. Just as journalism has been transformed to technology, globalization, shifting values, so we must recognize that the future of governance and civic engagement depends on transformation. The world around is changing, and we must be ready to respond by solving today's challenges, by building tomorrow's solutions. This panel focuses on vital roles of women's leadership in shaping the future of the United Nations, the dangers posed by backlash against women's rights, the urgent need to address intergenerational trauma, and restoration of youth trust in inclusive governance and multilateral institutions. This is not abstract debates. They are questions that define the future of global governance and our capacity to achieve the sustainable development goals. I came from Lithuania, a country that just 20 years ago could hardly imagine the reality we live today. We had our first woman president, Adla, whose leadership marked a turning point for the country. Today, women hold the highest offices. Prime Minister is a woman, in fact, the second woman to hold the office in Lithuania, and women also serve the Minister of Defense, Education, Justice, maybe Culture. Women chair parliamentary committees, lead banks, run unicorn companies. Just a year ago, two of three top positions of state, Prime Minister and Speaker of Parliament were both held by women. Women also led the ministries of finance, economy, and innovation. This is not exception anymore in our country. This has become a new normal, and it has transformed to culture of governance and strengthened of democracy and built greater trust within society. But leadership is not only about women's representation. We must also recognize the crucial role of youth leadership. In Lithuania, we see this in work of school parliaments where students practice democracy at an early age. And in Liotas, Lithuanian Youth Council, which brings together youth organizations from across the country and to influence national policies. And we was very proud yesterday when our Lithuanian youth leader was participating in such event, Kubra Kaya. It shows how important to young people to start be at the right time and to participate in our lives today. They are not symbolic exercises, but real platforms where young leaders learn responsibility, representation, and dialogue. Across Europe and globally, Youth Leadership Program from United Nations, Youth Delegates to European Youth Parliament, and many regional Youth Ambassador initiatives are creating a generation of leaders who are courageous, innovative, unafraid to challenge outdated structures. Their voices are essential, and we are to renew multilateralism and ensure the future of inclusive governance. And just a little bit important samples. Across Europe and the world, women are also redefining leadership in times of crisis. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, has carried the weight of COVID-19, war in Ukraine, and the economic transformation of the European Union. Giorgia Meloni became the first woman Prime Minister of Italy, leading the Europe's largest economies. Kaja Kallas, let's remember former Latvian President Vika Freiberga is very important, who returned to Latvia after emigration in Canada and brought to Latvia a new era of democracy after years in exile. So these examples show us that leadership, both women's and youth, is not simply a matter of equality. It's about resilience, about building societies capable of withstanding crisis, about ensuring the decision reflect trust, diversity, and long-term vision. And if I may add personally thought, I'm really representing in my country minority with ancient history. We must learn to look at people not through the categories of gender and age, but through the lens of their ideas and their ability to shape the future. And the challenges before us is to recognize and elevate the solution that will serve generations to come. And this is the beginning, because next things which will happen, it's a professionals, people with experience will share their ideas, and we will start right now our discussion. In the end, you will have possibility to ask questions, but I think most important it's just to hear the voices that came from different countries to share with you opinions. Each of distinguished guests will share their insights, concerns, perspectives. Later, we will go on questions series. Our first speaker is Kelly Kimball, the managing editor of More to Her Story, a global newsroom amplifying women's and girls' voices through reporting, features, and investigations. She also teaches law, ethics, safety, and Craig David Newman Graduate School of Journalism, CUNY. So please warmly welcome our first speaker, Mrs. Kelly.
A very good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for being here. And thank you to the Journalists and Writers Foundation for inviting me to speak at this critical convening on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. My name is Kelly Kimball. I am a journalist and managing editor of the global nonprofit newsroom More to Her Story. Our mission is urgent yet simple: to center the voices of women and girls through robustly reported journalism. Every story we publish crosses my desk, and with each one, I am reminded of the weight of our responsibility, because many of these stories rarely make it to the headlines of mainstream media. Our newsroom has grown rapidly in recent years, demonstrating its need, with over 120 reporters filing stories from underreported geographies, refugee camps, war zones, border crossings, rural villages, and protected wildlands. We've published investigations into everything from period poverty in Gaza, sexual abuse in Malawi's tea plantations, to forced hysterectomies in India's sugarcane belt, to Afghan girls defying Taliban restrictions by enrolling in underground schools or taking classes over clandestine radio programming. These are not side stories. They are the story. They tell us about the ripple effects of global flashpoints, and about how the status of women is inextricably tied to the state of our societies. They tell us, as world leaders gather here in New York, I want to share from my vantage point as a global affairs journalist that what I believe is one of the greatest impediments to peace and prosperity today: the stagnating and, in many cases, worsening status of women worldwide. Across the regions we cover, a sobering pattern emerges. In Afghanistan, 4 years after the Taliban's return to power, women face what the International Criminal Court now calls gender persecution. Women on the ground are calling it something far more severe: gender apartheid. From the banning of girls' education beyond primary school to the imprisonment of women for defying dress codes, Afghan women live under a system of near total erasure. Yet Afghan women continue to resist. It's why our newsroom continues to keep their voices and experiences alive by partnering with Afghan women-led newsrooms like Rakshana Media and Zan Times, to remind the world that women are never passive victims of history, but agents of defiance and resilience. In Iran, women remain on the front lines of one of the most defiant civil rights movements in recent history. The crackdown that followed the death of Mahsa Amini in 2022, which passed its 3rd anniversary this month, has only intensified, but global headlines have precipitously fallen from the top fold. Women are surveilled, fined, beaten, electric shocked, and imprisoned for showing their hair or peacefully protesting, yet millions continue to engage in creative acts of daily resistance. Their struggle shows us that gender equality is not a cultural afterthought. It is a litmus test for a society's democratic health. In Gaza, our reporters have told the stories of women enduring an impossible war. displacement, and deprivation layered upon entrenched gender inequality. We've covered the quiet yet pervasive crisis of menstrual dignity and maternal mortality, issues that rarely surface in international negotiations, but that define survival for half the population. These stories are not distractions from geopolitics, they are the sharpest consequence. In Sudan, where the war has fractured governance and left civilians unprotected, women are sustaining both survival and the vision for peace. Dr. Entisar Abdel-Sadiq, a leading women, peace, and security expert, has repeatedly demonstrated that Sudanese women can and must be central to negotiations as leaders shaping ceasefires and political transitions. Her experience in Geneva in August 2024, where Sudanese women were part of peace talks, underscores that inclusion is possible when there is genuine will. I know this not just as an observer, but as a journalist. Add more to her story, we have covered how women in Sudan, especially those operating emergency response rooms and community kitchens, bear the brunt of violence. As we speak, RSF bombardments are overtaking El Fasher and pushing into the Kordofan region, where civilians are enduring both persistent conflict and systemic neglect. We have reported on women who were the first to speak out about the atrocities unfolding yet again in Darfur, bearing witness to genocide when the world was not listening. We have documented how women are among the thousands arbitrarily detained as the war drags on. And in the course of this reporting, I have spoken to Dr. Entisar, whose words embody both the frustration and the fierce determination among Sudanese women leaders. In Ukraine, too, women bear the brunt of war. They are among the millions displaced. They sustain families under bombardment. They endure wartime sexual violence. And yet they are also leading local councils, volunteer brigades, and grassroots humanitarian responses. Their dual role as targets of war crimes and as architects of resilience underscores the paradox of women in conflict, indispensable, but too often invisible. As a newsroom leader, amplifying these voices is not optional. It is what makes journalism responsible, rigorous, and relevant. Supporting women's leadership is also the foundation of robust journalism that keeps the world informed, keeps policymakers accountable, and keeps hope alive in places where it is most under siege. This brings us to Sustainable Development Goal 5, achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls. Gender advisors, humanitarians, academics, researchers, and advocates have told our newsroom that the reality is simple. Without SDG 5, none of the other SDGs are achievable. We cannot eradicate poverty, SDG 1, when 351 million women and girls are projected to remain in extreme poverty within the next 5 years. We cannot achieve quality education, SDG 4, while girls are banned or blocked from classrooms. We cannot build peace, justice, and strong institutions, SDG 16, while women peace builders are excluded from negotiations and gender-based violence remains normalized and unpunished. Research shows that governments lose as much as 4% of GDP to violence against women. Strong women's rights movements stabilize communities and countries. When women's rights are upheld, societies are more prosperous, more peaceful, more democratic. Conversely, every crackdown on women's rights signals democratic backsliding, fuels cycles of instability and impunity. But there is another challenge. While the need for women-led solutions has never been more urgent, women's organizations are facing unprecedented funding cuts. Less than 1% of global aid reaches women-led organizations. A UN Women report that will be released later this month has found that 40% of groups it surveyed have scaled down or shut down their shelters, emergency hotlines, and psychosocial support, turning survivors away. As Sarah Hendricks of UN Women said when presenting this report over the weekend, the cost of global inaction is counted in lives. As a journalist, I see another danger. When women's voices are lost, accountability disappears and impunity grows. threatening to invisibilize the communities and movements the press so badly needs to cover. According to the latest Global Media Monitoring Project released earlier this month, women appear in just 26% of news stories worldwide, a figure virtually unchanged in 15 years. Only 2 out of every 100 stories challenge gender stereotypes. Journalism that counters gender bias has fallen to its lowest point in 3 decades. This is not simply a media crisis. This is a democratic crisis. So where do we go from here? We must listen to what women activists from countries like Afghanistan, Sudan, Ukraine, Syria, Haiti, Myanmar, and elsewhere are telling us this week in New York. Sustainable peace is impossible without the voices, leadership, and rights of women at the center. Women are not a footnote to peace building and good governance. They are the backbone of it. The Sustainable Development Goals are not 17 separate ambitions. Our journalism has found they are interdependent, and gender equality is the fulcrum on which all of the others rest. When women are empowered, societies are healthier, economies are stronger, democracies are more resilient, peace is more durable, and the press has true freedom. When women are silenced, the opposite unfolds. As a journalist, my task is to tell these stories as the core of global affairs reporting. For policymakers and advocates, their task is to ensure women's rights organizations are not the first to be defunded, not the first to be under threat, but the first to be supported. Because if there's one truth that has emerged again and again in my reporting, it's this: the fate of women and girls is not separate from the fate of our shared world. Thank you so much.
Oops. So thank you, Kelly. And now let's turn to Adla. Shashati, a journalist activist from Greece with Sudanese roots. She has dedicated her work to fighting racism and building inclusive societies across Europe. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening. First of all, I would like to thank the Journalists and Writers Foundation for the invitation, my fellow panelists here, the moderator, and all of you who are here to listen and hopefully contribute also to the discussion that will follow. So I'm Adla Shashati. I'm the director of the Greek Forum of Migrants. And today I will try to address an issue deeply rooted in many of our communities: how intergenerational trauma can be mitigated and the mental well-being of youth and women protected in times of conflict. More specifically, when I refer to intergenerational trauma, I refer to the transmission of trauma across generation, shaping identities and mental health along with other things and during conflict, and the way it is being addressed through the grassroots level work, through the work that we are doing. Before I do that, I would like to introduce you to the work done by my organization, which is a network of migrant grassroots and migrant-led communities. The Greek Forum of Migrants is operating as a union since 2002. And our members and our board of directors are exclusively representatives from migrant and refugee communities. We find that this is really important to represent ourselves. So currently our network numbers 44 organizations from Africa, Asia, Eastern Europe, Middle East, plus other associations and networks, as you can see in the slide. We vision a society. Okay, I'm sorry about that, but I cannot see the slide and I don't know what, no, it's okay. So we vision a society where migrants enjoy equal rights, fair treatment and social inclusion, and we deliver projects focused on equal rights, social cohesion, empowerment, and combating discrimination. So what are we facing in Greece? Mainly what most of the migrant communities are facing nowadays all over the world. The migrant population in Greece is approximately 600,000, including both migrants and beneficiaries of international protection, and around 300,000 European migrants. Almost 1 million people or more, and this is the information taken by the Greek Ministry of Migration and Asylum on May 2025. I'm saying this because there is an accusation that we have a lot of migrants in Greece and that there is an invasion of migrants in the country, which is an interesting narrative. The current challenges migrants in Greece face have to do mostly with the following: criminalization of migration, a global phenomenon. The new law criminalizes undocumented migrants. If you are found without papers, you are immediately imprisoned and face deportation. It doesn't matter if you are 30 years in the country or if you came yesterday, you still are facing the same challenges. You are invisible to the state. Residence permits are issued expired because it takes too long to issue them. And the Greek reality is full of bureaucratic obstacles, which create difficulties for the vulnerable communities. Imagine that today we have over 250,000 migrants who reside in Greece, and some even for more than 20 years, and they are still waiting for the renewal of the residence permit or the first issue of the residence permit for from 1 up to 5 years. There is no integration policy. Thousands of refugees and migrants face homelessness due to policy gaps in integration and shelter programs. And there are no state schools for learning the Greek language. And if you are lucky enough, your municipality might have school, or your community might have volunteers inside who are teaching the Greek language. So people are in danger. Due to the negative narrative towards migration, there is a rise in the far right, in hate speech, hate crimes, racism, and discrimination. And the victims are the racialized and migrant communities, and especially the vulnerable groups, including survivors of gender-based violence, people with mental health issues, single women or single parents, and young adults. People who have faced traumatic experiences and are being traumatized again through a different process. And it takes even more time to heal. We have seen that youth exposed to conflict may experience anxiety, depression, PTSD, and barriers to education and community integration. On the other hand, women face compound stress from caregiving burdens and trauma to gender-specific challenges, such as violence and exclusion. The psychological approach requires time and attention, so the re-emergence of the traumas suffered can be a long and difficult process. It cannot go away in a day. It needs time, and the authorities don't seem to care to provide this time. Moreover, they are putting more obstacles to vulnerable communities. What we are facing in Greece is actually a systemic failout. Due to the lack of a holistic approach on migration policies, migrants in Greece face a repetition of trauma in their everyday life, a trauma that reflects throughout generations, from birth to school, the regularization process, employment, even death. And without proper support, trauma becomes entrenched across generations, weakening the social fabric. The support we try to give as an organization relies mostly on care and safety, because we believe that this is the path to healing and mitigation. So, so our community-led groups and forums, often places of belonging and mutual support, which are fundamental for the beginning of healing. We try to address lack of information, marginalization, and exclusion through several tools inside the communities. Safe spaces or places of care are created and run voluntarily by migrant community-led groups. We provide free and valid information about services for health, including mental health, psychosocial support, legal aid, job assistance through an infodesk initiative, which operates daily in the Greek Forum of Migrants as an information office with referrals from and for migrants. Plus, moreover, we believe that there should be an inclusive access to mental health services. Mental health care must be integrated into a broader service provision, especially for single women and youth with trauma-related vulnerabilities. There is an extreme need for culturally sensitive, language-accessible mental health services embedded in trusted community spaces. And we try to do that through mediation. Every day we receive calls from doctors and social workers to support them with translation mainly, home support, or we even do care during patients' cancer treatments, for example. We have created multi-language guides about gender-based violence, how to report hate crime incident, etc. And we also try to provide empowerment through integration and rights. We encourage policies that extend beyond emergency aid to long-term community support, housing, work, social integration. Actually, in one of the pillars that we work, which we call New Citizen, we have peer-to-peer training in order for the community representatives to lead and train others inside their community. Because, as I said, GFM's advocacy relies on legal inclusivity, fair migration law, and access to social services as critical to mental health recovery. And this always should be done in collaboration with the community's leaders in order for them to represent themselves, which is crucial for the work that we are doing. Other important tools are education, leadership, and skill building. We have the youth-focused programs with language classes, workshops, leadership training, build resilience, self-esteem, and future orientation. And we also have women's empowerment initiatives with economic, educational, psychosocial initiatives that restore the agency and reduce trauma circles. And we are very proud of the work and our effort and the efforts done by our women's group, the United African Women Organization, the Nigerian Women Organization of Greece, the Migrant Women Network, the Albanian Women Network. We have a lot of them, and we are really proud of the work that they are doing. So mainly at the Greek Forum of Migrants, we recognize that healing and inclusion demand collective effort. We must unite governments, civil society, and migrant-led organizations, with migrants taking the lead in advocacy and empowerment. What is really important is to emphasize migrant-led initiatives like ours, informed by lived experience and community insight as catalysts for sustainable inclusion. So, a conclusion to action and call to action could be a trauma from conflict can echo for generations, but also can healing. So by investing in culturally informed mental health services, equitable policies, solidarity, community and empowerment of youth and women, we can break the intergenerational cycles. A call to action could refer to the following: treat mental health as an urgent, non-negotiable aspect of refugee and migrant policy, champion inclusive integration, housing, psychosocial services, and legal access, elevate youth and women through leadership, education, and support programs, and support already based grassroots organizations and projects. And I finish by saying this: together, we can ensure that future generations inherit resilience, hope, and the strength to thrive. So thank you very much. And these are our contacts.
Okay, thank you so much, Adla. Before we continue, I would like also to welcome 25 countries who are participating together with us by Zoom. We will absolutely answer if you will leave a question or react, and this reaction will be also here in our panel. Probably between these 25 countries, there is my family, which is also watching this conference, and there is a young people there. That's why we will continue talking about the youth. And Daniel Omondi, it's your time, from Kenya, who spent more than a decade improving young people and advancing peace. His work shows how youth leaders can truly transform communities. It's your time, Daniel, right now.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Daniel. As you heard, I am the Africa representative of the Global Peace Foundation, and it is my honor to represent the Global Peace Foundation and also to represent my country, Africa, at this critical panel on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly, which is the 80th. I begin by extending my deepest gratitude to the Journalists and Writers Foundation for this invitation, and to our valued partner, which is the Harmony Institute in Kenya, under the leadership of my friend, Dr. Erican Taskin. Our shared commitment to collaborative peace building makes this platform not just a speaking opportunity, but a testament to the power of partnership itself. At the Global Peace Foundation, our founder, Dr. Hyunjin Preston Moon, defines youth not just by a number on a birth certificate, but by the state of one's mind and heart. It is youth. Fundamentally, youth is the ability to dream, and to look at the world not just as it is, but as it ought to be. And across the globe today, we are witnessing a seismic shift, an awakening driven by a generation of dreamers who have refused to accept the status quo. We have seen the raw power of this dream on the streets of Nairobi, Dhaka recently, in Kathmandu. The Gen Z's uprising is not merely a protest, but I like to call it the necessary pangs, the necessary birth pangs of a new civilization. So this quest by the youth is the sound of a new civilization struggling to be born. Ladies and gentlemen, our young people have refused to accept corruption as the norm. They have refused to accept bad leadership, and they're taking action. Yesterday in the panel, I saw the young people who are presenting here. They're saying they're lighting, fire on the issues that have been ignored for a long time. So this civilization that our young people want is a civilization that rejects the old diseases of corruption and discrimination, and demands a world built on integrity, justice, and the radical idea that humanity is one family and a God. But a dream, no matter how powerful, requires a blueprint for action. It requires us to equip these dreamers, our young people, not just with passion, but with the tools for transformational leadership. This is the mission of the Global Peace Foundation. And through initiatives that we engage in, like the President's Fellowship, we are intentionally nurturing the next generation of young leaders. We move beyond skills to building character, values, instilling a value-based leadership of service above self and unity over division. At the Global Peace Foundation, we are preparing these young minds to lead a global renaissance. Because by 2050, Africa, where I come from, will be home to a quarter of the world's dreamers. They say Africa is the youngest continent. And our work at the Global Peace Foundation is a direct contribution to the blueprint you have all gathered here to discuss, the SDGs. So in pursuit of SDG 4 on quality of education, our initiatives that have transformed over 5,000 educators, believing that to transform education, we must transform the people holistically. So we have this program that says that we need to transform education, especially in the global south, towards 2050, because in the year 2050, we have sitting in your classrooms, if you are educators, we have these 14-year-old, 16-year-old, the Gen Zs, who, as we go towards 2050, will be the presidents, will be the members of parliament, will be the ministers. I think I will be too old, by then, maybe most of us will be, but the people sitting in class today will be entrusted in the leaders. So our educators and education system have an opportunity today to influence the kind of generation we will have in 2050. And on SDG 8, on economic growth, we have a program called Leap Hubs that have empowered over 3,000 young entrepreneurs in Kenya to innovate and create opportunities. For SDG 15, which is life on land, through our Chandaria nurseries, we have grown over 3 million trees, restoring ecosystems and fostering environmental stewardship. And at the heart of it all, SDG 16 on the peace and strong institution is advanced through our global campaigns for dialogue and unity, from the One Korea campaign to programs preventing violent extremism in Africa. This is how we build peace, through concrete action aligned with the global goals and powered by SDG 17, which is basically a partnership. Yet, as the great Genghis Khan said, that if one person has a dream, it is just a dream. But if many share into that dream, ladies and gentlemen, becomes achievable. So today, from this global stage in New York, I call on you to share in the dreams of those who are silenced. Let us share in the Korean dream of our founder, Dr. Preston Moon. We cannot speak of empowering while the youth of North Korea remained isolated from civilization itself. North Korea is the only country today who, have no freedom. They're still living in the past, basically dictatorship. So today, in this UNGA, we are urging the global community to prioritize dialogue for a peacefully reunited Korean peninsula. If we can have peace, and unification of the Korean peninsula, then we will be able to achieve peace in the other side of the world. So let us share in the dreams also, like the fellow panelists mentioned, the dreams of the Afghan girls who dream only of classrooms and not confinement. So we call for the immediate reversal by the Taliban on the ban on education for women and girls. The Taliban should know that to deny education is to murder a dream. And I know today, if President Trump considers it a priority, in Afghanistan, I'm sure that, President Trump and the leaders today gathered at UNGA can use their power to ensure that the Afghan girls, are at least given the right to education. And in my continent, Africa, we must share the dream of a peaceful future. It is time to silence the guns in the Sahel, the Eastern Dryad Sea, the Sudan. The sound of gunfire is the sound of stolen futures. But peace is not just the absence of war. It is the presence of opportunity. For an African renaissance to flourish, we must break down the walls between us. I call upon African leaders to eliminate visas within Africa and allow for free movement of people. As you know, Africa was just a continent that was, just sliced into pieces during the Berlin Conference by the colonizers. And so today, African leaders are, basically using the same boundaries, to restrict freedoms amongst themselves. I think African leaders should gather the courage to bring down visas and allow free movement in the continent. Let our dreamers, who are our youth, let our innovators, let our traders move freely, as our data moves freely. And to our partners in the West, we in Africa extend a challenge, share in the dream, in this dream. We would want the West to dismantle restrictive visa practices that target, especially the African youth. It's very difficult for an African youth to get visas to come to the West, even if it's a legitimate, reason to travel. These barriers are not just policies, but they are a statement of mistrust that undermines our shared future as humanity. So today we call upon, the West and, everyone else, let us build bridges and not walls. So the energy is here. The dreamers are emerging. The question before us is whether we will be the architects of their future or the guardians of a broken past. Let us choose to be architects. Let us choose a world of peace, a world of opportunity, and a world where every single person is valued as an essential member of our one family. So, ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I look forward to any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel, for sharing with us. And we have our final panelist. It's Oluwaseun Ikusika, a Nigerian British lawyer and YAS ambassador. She continues to inspire young people worldwide and is a strong advocate for gender equality and human rights. The floor is yours. We're expecting to hear new and interesting things from you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Oluwaseun Ikusika, and I'm a lawyer and a gender and youth advocate and a local leader at the France and British Council. Thank you to JWF for the opportunity to speak on this topic that concerns all of us. I'm honored to speak here today, not just as a youth leader or a youth advocate, but also as one of millions of young people worldwide who are calling for real change and how we are included in governance and global decision-making. Right now, I would say the trust between the youth and institutions is breaking down. Many young people feel ignored. They feel excluded. They feel tokenized in spaces where critical decisions are being made. And yet, the youth are still the most affected by these decisions, whether it is climate change, whether it is conflict, digital rights, or economic security. Our futures are on the line. Every time I attend any conference, there's always one or two or more youths complaining about one thing or the other. However, let me be clear, I'm not saying that youths are disengaged. We are not, of course. But the fact is we are dissatisfied, we are disappointed, and we are unhappy. But regardless, we are still organizing, we are still protesting, we are still building communities, we are still launching movements, and we are still shaping new ideas of leadership every single day. But too often, those in power still see us as future stakeholders instead of equal partners of today. We do not just want a seat at the table for the show. We are not just here to attend conferences and take pictures and videos. Yeah, of course, we will take those fine pictures and videos, but that's not why we're here. We want influence, we want accountability, we want change, and we want to open the door that has been historically closed. I remember when I just attained the position as a local leader at the France and British Council, within 1 month, I had done lots of things. And I remember my director saying, oh, won't people think you're desperate? And I did reply and said, that's not me being desperate. That's the real action of the youth that want change for our community, for the country, for the globe. So how do we rebuild the trust between the youth and the government? Firstly, which is some of the things we'll be saying, the youth participation. It needs to be real, not symbolic. And this means establishing more youth councils that truly influence decision-making processes. We urgently need participatory budgeting, where young people help allocate public funds for projects in education, in climate action, even in digital innovation. For example, in Europe where I came from, some cities like Scotland, France, and other European countries and cities, participatory budgeting has already shown success. So let's imagine that scaling up globally. We also need youth representatives to contribute to shaping the agendas, and this will also require the government that are willing to listen and take action. Secondly, which is one of the most important, the most common language we always advocate for every time we probably come to the UN or we are at any conference, is funding, investment. Youth need funding, they need investment, and we've been calling for this forever. Why there is only little progress, why there's been a progress is only little, and little is not enough. Youth need funding in programs, they need it in leadership, they need it in capacity, they need it in civic spaces, especially for the marginalized youth, those in conflict zones, and those that are too often left out as well. And finally, the third word, which is multilateralism must progress. The UN and other global bodies need to speak the youth language. They need to speak it digitally, accessibly, and transparently, most importantly. We need to see the impact of youth voices, not just be invited to speak. This is not about charity, this is democracy. And it is about justice as well, and it's about making the system that we inherited better than how we found them. So to the leaders in the room and online globally watching us, the best way to regain youth trust is to earn it. And I am very, very sure that the youth are ready to work with you to build a future that is not just inclusive, equitable, representative, and sustainable. So I will end my remarks with a short call to action to everybody here in this room and everyone watching us globally, that trust is not rebuilt overnight, it is earned. And it is earned through inclusion, consistency, and courage. So to the institution, I call on you to not just invite young people to the table, share the table with us. And I call on the government, do not fear youth power, embrace it. In fact, it is what we need. It is the antidote to stagnation and opposition. And to the young people like myself in this room and online everywhere, youths are not the voice of tomorrow. You are the integrity of today. So make sure you continue to demand your accountability, organize boldly, collaborate across borders, shape the system that you want to inherit. Because when youth trust governance, democracy becomes stronger. And when youth shape multilateralism, the world becomes more just. And when we do it together, what happens? We build a future that is not only inclusive, but unstoppable. So let's keep pushing, let's keep organizing, let's keep imagining, because a more inclusive, just, peaceful world is not only possible, it is also necessary. And it begins with me, it begins with you, it begins with every one of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Oluwaseun. Quite inspiring words. And now we will go to our discussion. I would like to remind that everybody who watches online also have a possibility to ask our participants. I will start our discussion. I don't know who will be first who want to answer, but I want to ask all of you the same question. If you had to name one practical step today to strengthen civic engagement of women and yes, what would it be? I don't know who will start. Maybe if you're ready, we will go from the right from me, and then we'll come back to more to women's question and yes too.
Sorry, can I have the question? Can I have the question again? Sorry. Can you repeat?
Yeah, the question was if you had to name one practical step today to strengthen civic engagement of women and youth, what would it be?
One practical step.
Just a step which you will prefer to do first to solve the question, the problem, just to give the youth this possibility.
Sorry.
What you see is the first important things to do now to give youth possibility in the future to engage their power.
Okay, yeah. I would say, like in my speech, I was talking about participatory budgeting, which I feel like it should be included because that actually allows everyone, including women and youth, to engage with how funds, public funds, government funds, and everything are being allocated. So I would say my step is participatory budgeting.
Daniel, you have what to say about this?
For me, I believe that the family is the most basic unit where, the future is nurtured. And therefore, I want to call upon people, families, to take care of, let's nurture our young people within the family. Let's not leave our kids out there, without any direction. So I believe that if the family unit can be strengthened so that every parent is able to educate their kids, ensure that their kids have, have basically been supported towards education, getting jobs or starting business. I think that would be one practical step. If we are able to strengthen the family, then we can be able to strengthen the future.
Can you hear me? Okay. So I would go with the recognition of the fact that migration is a social phenomenon. So it should be dealt as a social phenomenon and not as an administrative burden in governments, and also the intersectionality between the goals, the sustainability goals, is also a driven factor for the intersectionality between other, we were discussing previously, between women, migrant, youth. There is an intersection there, which we have not discussed. So I would go through that step first.
I do have two ideas here when it comes to projects or ideas to strengthen civic engagement, and I'll answer this through the lens of a newsroom. At least here in the United States, news avoidance is at an all-time high. News fatigue, news literacy is at question as more and more people read the news less and use headlines that are scrolling on Instagram as a replacement to media literacy. And the way that we're addressing it at More to Her Story is to offer solutions journalism, not just looking at the exposition or crises at hand, but the innovations and the ideas that are met at the grassroots. At the same time, to address news fatigue and news avoidance, you have to meet these challenges with substantial and well thought out ethics, moral courage, and disclosure. With the advent of AI, more and more organizations and institutions may use it. And at least from a journalistic perspective, and what I teach my journalism students in graduate school is to disclose the ways in which AI may be used. And this ethic of disclosure and transparency is more important than ever for news institutions to offer to newsrooms and readers. And the other thing too is to bring journalism into third spaces. As less and less people actually read all the way down to articles, we need to bring journalism and the conversation of news stories into spaces for conversations, to Adla's point. And to be sure that we're always having an ear to the ground and bringing the right people in the room so that journalists and editors understand ethically and robustly how we can report with nuance and complexity, which is at great demand right now. So.
Okay, thank you. We have already questions from our online broadcast, and let's do like this: that who is ready and who would like to answer who appreciate this. So the question from Parsadar: what policy gaps currently hinder youth and women from participating meaningfully in decision-making processes, especially in the global south? Is any ideas who would like to start?
Do you want to repeat the question?
You don't hear the question, yes? So I will repeat it. What policy gaps currently hinder youth and women from participating meaningfully in decision-making processes, especially in the global south?
I can answer this, but as somebody from a global north country, I don't want to be the first to answer this if somebody else would like to speak first. If not, I'll just go ahead. All right. So two things come up is something that and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Oluwaseun, you had mentioned this idea of symbolic power versus actual authentic power. And I'm not going to point to any specific policies, but I will talk about specific actions and ethics. So Dr. Entisar Abdulsadig, a woman peace builder in Sudan, she was able to bring a collective of Sudanese peace builders to peace talks in August 2024. But other peace talks, they weren't in the same room as negotiators. And so optically, it may serve the guilt of global North powers to bring people into the room and say important things, but we must establish and link political will with authentic action. When I was a reporter for Foreign Policy magazine, I reported on the Inuit Circumpolar Council, which is a diaspora of Arctic indigenous communities, and they do not have voting power in the Arctic Council, or at the time when I was reporting, they didn't have voting power. They just sat in the same room as others with voting power on a geography that is native to their community. And when these are the things that lose trust between youth and multilateral spaces, is when we think that the optics of action is a supplement to the authenticity of action. When we bring the right people in the room, we have to give them political currency, economic currency, decision-making power. And so this is in the context of peace negotiations, bringing people in the same room as negotiators and giving them equal weight, basically. I know that didn't exactly answer the question, but I hope it's a little bit closer to it.
Yeah, let me just say that not just policy gap, but I think corruption is one of the biggest problems that are hindering the growth of young people, especially women, because you see, especially in Africa, corruption is an in thing. Corruption is budgeted for, and when you steal money that is meant for the roads, when you steal money that is meant for infrastructure, you are stealing the future of these young people. You get my point? So this is why the youth are very annoyed, because the politicians are very, very good at stealing, and when they steal, they steal the future of these young people, and so we must come up with intentional, policy, solutions, to ensure that we prevent politicians, African politicians especially, from stealing the future of the young people and the women of Africa especially.
I will also say this is that policy gaps, we also have to think about execution and implementation when it comes to policies. The Philippines recently decriminalized child marriage, but they're having a problem with implementation. And sometimes political will go so far as to decriminalize something, but then the execution and implementation becomes atrophied. And we can see this in countries globally. And I know advocates, we must continue to listen to advocates for the entire tail of accountability. So not just the policy itself, but the implementation as well. So.
Just adding up to that we should not forget to speak about the elephant in the room, which is the results of colonialism in most of the countries, and also the fact that there is war, poverty, and there are no policies about that. So there's a gap there.
Yeah, okay. one question from our online broadcast, and then we'll go. Maybe if you will have a questions also, please prepare, be ready. We will wait for them. So I will try to ask the question as loud as possible, not to repeat it second time. So question number 2 is from Zari. Societies facing several social, civic challenges, do you think 3,000 leadership roles for women and years could truly transform decision-making, or would structural and cultural barriers render their efforts symbolic rather than impactful? So it was like this, just the effort symbolic rather than impactful. If we will just prioritize leadership roles for women and years. It's just a question about if we will do what we talk about, probably, will it work?
We can try, at least. So it's not a matter of if it will work or not, but we at least have to try, because we are at the edge of, okay, not distraction, I have to be also positive, but we have seen that things are not working like that. We have seen, at least in our communities, we have seen that women, when women have the power, when youth have the power, they are bringing something new in the picture. And just reforming what already is there, sometimes you need to reconstruct it and not just reform it. So I think that we should try.
In Africa, they say that if you empower a woman, you empower the whole community. But I saw, for example, in Bangladesh, we had a woman who was the president for a long time and who was also very corrupt. And the Bangladeshi youth were able to remove that woman and replace her with a man who is now the former Nobel laureate, who is now called the chief technical advisor. Yeah, so I don't want to make it a gender issue, but I think, I don't want to say, but I think women are most probably less corrupt than men. And I mean, I'd want to say, and of course, my wife is here, and my wife is always, yeah, she's always, trying to guide me, into the right path. So I think if we get more women into leadership, I think we can be able to have better governance. That's what I think. Yeah. Yes, clap.
Yeah, and I just want to add that, I mean, like I said, that women are, I don't know, how did you put it again? How did you put it? They're less corrupt. Yeah, and I think at the same time, that can be intimidating as well. Because even most times when we go to meetings and, conferences and all that, we see people on the table, and the next thing is probably one woman among them out of probably 10 leaders. Then you go to another meeting again, you see 2 women, you see just, so I feel like we need more inclusion of women in decision power, which is very, very important. And they shouldn't see women as, they are intimidating, or we are not up to the task. Sometimes even with my personal experience, I remember sometimes in Geneva, and we had just finished the roundtable, and I'd actually spoken at the roundtable, and this person approached me and said, I never knew a woman could speak like this. I really thought women just come to conference, dress nice and all that. But the thing is, we are actually intelligent. We are very, very intelligent, and regardless, even when we are on the table where we are making decisions, women bring a lot to the table. We bring a lot to the table. Our work don't just end in the kitchen or however they think it is. Our work is much more than that. We organized, we are well structured. For example, the new UN president, General Assembly president is a woman. And I'm not going to lie, we can tell the difference, even both on social media, everywhere, we could tell the difference that yes, a woman is in power. And I want us to get to the point whereby when a woman attains a position, we shouldn't have to say, oh, the first woman to do this, the first man to do this. That's because it's shocking, it's surprising because we hardly get women. So we want to get to a point whereby we don't need to say, I'm the first woman to do this, I'm the first woman to do this. No, that's still like, oh, we're still surprised or it's something new. We don't want it to be something new, we want it to be something normal. So I'm still going to call on more inclusion of women in decision-making power. And I'm so very excited that the new General Assembly president is a woman.
Thank you so much. I think, Ellie, you was mentioning this countries. For me, the question just, is it culturally possible in some regions to have women on the right? Also, just to be, you mentioned Iran, you mentioned Afghanistan. What should happen that, how to solve this question? Because it's cultural question. It's, will women will be allowed one day? What should change?
I can only speak for how I'm seeing this from a reporter. I'm not a political scientist, but I will say that I think resource sharing and cross-border communication, which has been mentioned by the panelists before, is extremely important and something that is very naturally led by women. When we think about the movement to categorize what is happening in Afghanistan as gender apartheid, a delegation of Afghan activists actually went to South Africa and was in community with South African advocates, researchers, academics to talk about racial apartheid and South Africa's history there. There was research sharing in community, and African women are actively campaigning to have more legal and political currency to define gender apartheid. And I think that's the only way that we can do this, is to bring in and understand and remember history, to have cross-border communication and solidarity. And to bring back the center of gravity to those that have the most to lose in global flashpoints. That's what I tell my students as well in graduate journalism school is when we think about the powerful, we also have to think about the powerless and how we bring nuance and complexity to their human experiences. So hope that answered the question.
Yes, and also you have to rely in the work that is being done by the diasporic community. So we have, for example, we have Iranian and Afghan women in Greece who have formed a community and are working towards promoting the change for the policies in their countries and also making well known to the public, trying to do it throughout Europe, of what is happening to women in Afghanistan and Iran. So they can also be inside this picture.
And we'll have possibility to ask 2 questions from the audience. If you will just raise your hand, you will, here's on the right side, girls, please, if you can help. We kindly ask you to keep questions short, focused, and just to dedicate it exactly who you expect to answer.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shirley Boiron. I'm a Global Peace Ambassador on the IPPDR platform. I am the CEO of Society in Action and Renew Health and Wealth. This is the founder of Society in Action. Our organization, we serve underserved women, single parents, and unprivileged children. So we are talking about women and youth as leaders for civic engagement. What kind of strategies can we use to effective and what strategies are most effective in empowering women and youth to take on leadership role in civic engagement and policy making? What would you suggest? What do you think is most effective?
I think one of the strategies that we have seen, especially in Africa, especially in Kenya, where I come from, is something called affirmative action, where they come up with seats that are designed for women. We have also seats that are designed for youth, but usually this is not enough. I don't believe that affirmative action is enough. I think we need to be more intentional about involving the young people. We need mentorship. We need the youth, especially in, the leaders, especially in Africa, should not fear mentoring the next generation of leaders to take over from them. So, but you have seen in countries, sometimes countries in Africa, we have seen presidents who have been, presidents for almost for life, 30, 40 years. They don't want to go for elections. And sometimes they run against young people, and you see them persecuting those young people. These young people are not even free to campaign in their own countries. So I think we need, I really want to call upon, I saw when President Obama was president, he came up with something called the Young Africa Leaders Initiative to mentor African leaders. So I was asking myself, why do you need an American president to mentor African leaders? Why can't African leaders mentor African leaders? Why are they afraid of mentoring those who can take over from them? So mentorship is, I think, one of the most important ways we can use to be able to do that.
So how do you intend to attract these kids to those mentorship programs? Yes, they are there, they are available, but how do we get them to come to us and not make them feel like they're unwanted? Because as we said, the kids, the young generation, they feel like they're not wanted at the table. But everything that we do now is impacting their future. And they have to deal with everything that we're doing now. So how do we work together with them to make them feel like they are more included, to make them feel like this is an inclusive environment, that they can come and feel safe, and as you said, not feel persecuted?
This is what I said, the family, of course, there are young people who feel like old people should get out of the way. And we discussed it here, right? And we said that that is not possible because we share this world with you. And I said earlier on that some of the old people, for example, my parents, my grandparents, the challenges that they shared when they were young were bigger than what the challenges young people are facing today. For example, those young people were running away from being captured and sold as slaves. You understand? To be sold in America and other places. They shared challenges such as, colonization, So those challenges were much greater than the challenges that young people face today. So my appeal to young people is take advantage of, for example, and we discussed here about digitization, AI, the media. The youth can actually, like there's a lady who said, you can create a table for yourself, but you can use AI to get a competitive edge into business, for example, because the old people don't know how to use AI. So you can use AI to ensure that you succeed in business. So rather than fighting with the old people for the small opportunities, you can actually use AI to get ahead and create better opportunity. And let us be futuristic, because the future is better than the past. That's how I look at it.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm sorry we cannot go this way because we just have and ask you for the short questions. We are finalizing our session. So if you have a concrete question, as we asked, first you ask the hand, then you get the microphone. Then now it's okay. Please make it concrete. We need to go to final start of our moderation. I'll very appreciate this.
Mr. Daniel, you raise a lot of discussion, but I'm not going there with you on that. We have United States of America friends impose Africa so much bad president and government to steal. We all know. We're not gonna talk about it. I don't know why we're scared of America, but she's been doing things that not right. Okay, you mentioned that the Bangladesh woman, she's the only one that corrupted. Let me put the fact for you. Madam Aquino was corrupted. You know Margaret Thatcher from Great Britain? She was corrupted. Vodita Chamorro, corrupted. I can tell you more and more. So many women who've been in politics, they've been corrupted. All right? Yeah. Because they're not allowed to know before you say something, put your record straight. Okay, now, how you be supporting Mr. Ibrahim Traore to put Africa as a one country? And also, rename Africa back to all names, His name was Al-Kabulan. Since 202 before Christ, Leo, Scipio, Africanus, the woman, changed that name. We don't need that name no more. Get back to the old name, Al-Kabulan, mean Garden of Eden. Get back to it.
Was not a question, so I'm very sorry. We have the last question from the lady in the middle, if we can. Here on the left side, girls. Here on the left, the lady, here is the lady. Yeah, you. Yes, please give the microphone on this side, if it's possible, to the lady. Yes, exactly one. Here it is. And it will be the last question. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Tammy. I just wanted to briefly ask a question in regards to the global resurgence, pushing back on gender reform. I think it was like briefly touched upon. The digital age has kind of been the helm of this resurgence against gender parity. What are the mechanisms that women or youth can use to address this, and how do you see it moving forward?
The idea of the pushback of gender reform, as a journalist, I must not take at face value the phrases and narratives of the powerful without bringing them into context, right? And as activists and as grassroots organizers, we cannot do, you cannot do that either. So in the United States, our leader is also talking about this narrative of an invasion of migrants, an invasion of illegal aliens. That narrative is false. And as a journalist, I must take into question, be very objective and accurate about what the powerful are saying and who has the most to lose from that narrative, and bring as much nuance and context to that community as much as I can. It builds news literacy, it builds understanding, it builds solidarity among communities. And I could see that blueprint or that ethic working also in advocacy and in policy analysis to say, this is the misinformation, this is the narrative, here are the holes in those things, here are the human stories telling the reality on the ground. And we need to do that more across different sectors. I mean, news institutions are losing their relevance, they're losing their ethos. As journalists, we have to defend that by meeting our readers where we're at, having more transparency, having moral courage in our approach to journalism. And so, when there is a rollback of gender equality, of gender justice, we must push back against the shifting Overton window, if anyone is familiar with that political term. We must push back against the shift of what is acceptable or not acceptable to say in society, with rigorous journalism, with human story, and cross-sector collaboration. And there's a lot more to be said about this, and I'm happy to take those questions after the panel as well.
We are running out of time, but what we see, and just to finalize it, is that the topic we were starting to discuss, we need to continue. There is a lot of things to do. Let me do a very short remark on a personal note, because not as moderator, but as a father of 3 perfect ladies in my house, 22, 20, and 9. So as a father, I deeply hope that the times ahead will be dedicated to our children, first of all. And the second thing, we need, their leadership, their creativity and courage will make our future brighter, and this is for sure. That's why youth should now start to participate in our life. So thank you very much to everybody who was participating with our speakers, and we will continue later with the panel 3. So thank you so much to all of you for the patience. Thank you.